So I think what we've explored is, as we said, we're going to take our minds beyond. Gerd took us to places, Vivian took us to unimaginable places, tiny pancreas, oil from yeast and all sorts of amazing things. So certainly going beyond. And I think for us as business leaders, really the concept that I've sort of take away from all of this is absolutely everything we thought about, everything virtually needs a reset. And I want to just explore some of these dimensions of that reset with you, get your input, see where your mind is, see where your businesses are, what are the kind of things that you're kind of grappling with, and then see how we translate that into successful business growth going forward. So when we look at, life as a futurist, I've been doing this now for, believe it or not, 32 years. I know I don't look that old, but it's not about predicting the kind of world that Gerd and Vivian spoke about. It's really just about hearing the signals that are telling us what these big waves of change are going to be in the future. How do we interpret these signals? Some of them are pretty obvious. ChatGPT has made a huge noise in just a couple of months, right? I think they're now up to over 200 million users in the space of 3 months. It's kind of crazy. So that's a big signal. And we've certainly heard about that this afternoon. But what are the tiny signals? The ones we ignore. And combined, these signals create what I call unstoppable business tsunamis. And I use the word tsunami on purpose because a tsunami starts a long way away where we're too busy with our operations to worry about them. So we ignore them, even if we notice the little ripple on the ocean. But the tsunami wave doesn't stop, it keeps coming towards us. And then if we're not ready for it, as Gerd said, if we haven't prepared adequately for the future, that tsunami smashes into our marketplace, into our ability to attract talent or raise capital or whatever it might be. And we suddenly discover that we don't kind of have the kind of business we wished we had. And so for me, the epoch, as Louis will call it later on, I'm sure he never misses a chance to use that word. So I'm going to get in first. It's an epoch where we hit the 3 keys on the keyboard: Control, Alt, Delete, global system reboot. But folks, this is not just about geopolitics or transition to energy. It's even our role as a mother and as a father. The conversations we have with our kids around the dinner table at night, I think needs a reboot. About the kind of world they're going to experience, the subject choices they need to make. And of course, our role as parents, what are the skills we need to embed in them so that they can win and be happy in this kind of new world, whatever it may be. And so these are the 4 areas that Louis and I are going to explore, talking just at a macro level about some of the big world issues, but really what it means for business. And then how do businesses stay relevant? What are some of the big shifts? And then how do you reimagine this concept of growth and value creation in a country that's as challenging as ours and in a world that is as challenging as it is? So when we go on and we think about the epoch of Control, Alt, Delete, the truth is we're living in a transition from the old world that you and I know and really enjoy, and quite frankly, we're successful at. That's how we built the careers that brought us into this room this afternoon. But there's a new world forming rapidly in some areas and slowly in other areas. But what we begin to realize is that these 2 worlds are fundamentally different. And whether it's the young kids' behavior, or whether it's new technologies, or whether it's new regulation, or whether it's a shift in global geopolitics, it's kind of transitioning into something else. But the dilemma is for us in business is that we hold on to the legacy of the old world. Why? Because it's really comfortable. We quite like that world. We kind of understand it, or we thought we did. But something else is emerging. And I think the successful transition into this new world will be proportional to our desire to hold on to old legacy. The more we hold on, the less successful we'll be. So let me just ask the room, what do you think of some of the big legacies that, not you in particular, but business in general holds on to from the old world as we transition to the new world? Come up with a few ideas. What do you think are some of the big legacies that create this friction and maybe even resistance to the shift into tomorrow? Any ideas? Sorry? Government policies, right? And it's not just any particular government. You and I might have the same government in mind right now. So we're government agnostic, Sipho, but it's government policy, right? They're not fast, right? And sometimes they want to go backwards to 50 years ago. That's fascinating. So the real world of opportunity is way ahead of the people that need to have the skills to write the enabling policy. And of course, the gap gets bigger and bigger, right? And what happens in that case, in my view, is you reach a tipping point And then governments are going to find themselves actually irrelevant because leaders are going to just do what needs to be done, because that's the only way it's going to happen. We'll put you in jail. Well, they can try. Bring them on. Okay, so great sort of bit of legacy. What else is there out there in your experience that really we hang on to because we know that old world? Yeah. Completely outdated, right? And we still have departments that we call HR. I mean, that's a crazy relic from the old world, huh? You know. So this is the thing. I mean, they're cornerstones of how we run our companies and how we run our economies that are vested and grown and designed in that old world. And the question is, are we ready for the shift to the new world? I would add to that, and I'll get back to that later on. And if I don't, I know Louis will. Just think about the role of boards of directors in clinging on to that old world and that old legacy, right? Think of the people on your boards. Are they future fit? That's another question. Let's move on rapidly. So think about, as Gerd and Vivian have mentioned, these are the big things that, that we face in the world. And, we're clearly coming, I think, to the end of Pax Americana. We question whether we would trust the United Nations to develop the governance around AI that Gerd spoke about, et cetera, et cetera. And so there are many challenges. Is capitalism really fit for purpose? How do we measure success in 2030 and beyond? Can it still be EBITDA, market cap, PE ratio, or what else can it be? And sometimes we've tried triple bottom line, balanced scorecard. These things haven't worked. So how are we going to reimagine those? But here's the challenge, ladies and gentlemen. The challenge is in the 2023 Edelman Trust Research Trust Barometer, the institution, if I can call it that, most trusted in the world today in 2023 in March is business leaders, right? So we don't trust the global institutions. We certainly, and this is a global thing. This is not a South African survey. It's a global survey. But trust is only still resident with business. So that's a massive responsibility on our shoulders to reimagine and create relevant futures. And I think, as Sipho said, we need to do this ahead of maybe government policy in most cases. And so the only way we're going to do that is if we can take our minds beyond the frameworks that we've always used to define things like leadership, growth, innovation, sustainability, etc. Because only when we remove these frameworks of thought, language, words we use, do we open up a world of infinite possibility. Words trap us. And as Gerd said, we bring these old worlds like socialism versus capitalism into the debate. We need a complete new language, because what we really need to do to take our mind and our countries and our families beyond, the challenge of today is to think, what is the art of the possible? What is actually possible? Now, I would not have thought it's possible to grow a spleen, right? Or to make oil from yeast. It's I wouldn't have thought that possible. So just think about the art of the possible in every single space. But I think as leaders, despite the trust barometer, we've not told a lot of truths about a lot of things in what we do as business leaders. And for me, we've got to start this turnaround to say, let's just stop the nonsense and start telling the truth about some really important things. And one of those, in particular, leading on from what Gerd's slides focused on a lot, and I didn't see Gerd's slides before this, is that we've got to stop lying about sustainability being this panacea for everyone's problems. Because sustainability in many people's minds is defined as what do we need to do today so that tomorrow we can continue doing what we were doing yesterday. And if that's the definition, it's a lie, because what we were doing yesterday, let's be honest, is creating an environmental deficit, an overdraft. I'm not sure about you guys, but my bank managers never wiped out my overdraft and I've said, can we just reset to net zero, lekker, and move on? That's never kind of happened. So the question is, how do we change the language? How do we ban the word sustainability, create a brand new word that inspires, unites, and gives us better, more energized direction? And maybe that word needs to be, let's start talking about regenerative circular economies. Because if that's our ambition, to go beyond net zero. I worked with a glass company in England that 80 years ago was a sand mine. Now they're producing 4 billion bottles a year. To do that, they've got massive blast furnaces, heating the stuff at massive temperatures using, renewable energy. And they're so proud that they're going now with hydrogen furnaces. Yay! Let's try and get to net zero. Really? Is that all you're capable of as a smart human being? Our kids are not going to thank us for leading them a zero balance on planet Earth. They're going to ask us for more than that. That's what we need to start reimagining, I think. And it starts off with a word we don't often hear in boardrooms, and that is, what's the dream? And tapping into Vivian, it's humanness. It's a thing humans dream. I had a great dream this morning between 3 o'clock and 4 o'clock, and then I woke up and it was sadly all over. But what's the dream? Because we're on a road to the future. We have a current future. And while we're sitting here, things are happening out there in the marketplace, and we know that we'll decline unless we respond. But we're so focused on our business of today, short-term metrics, and many, many practical challenges. But we kind of focus on that. I was working with a bank in Europe, and I said to them, what are the significant innovation projects you're working on today? They came up with a list of 32. I then said, which of those are transformational? And being cynical bankers, they said, define that. I said, keep it easy. Through the eyes of a customer, which of these projects would they love? And how many do you think they ticked off? 32, 12 senior people in the bank, CEO plus 11 reports. How many do you think of 32 were truly transformational? How many do you guess? Give me a number. 20%, brave man. Give me a number. 3, you cynical. Babala. 5, less cynical, but you're all wrong. The answer was 0, kid you not. So massive focus on business of today, but what they weren't doing is thinking to themselves, how can I also, whilst I'm running this, how can I create something that the world, will value as we re-engineer this future? And so that's where we start talking about how do we create categories of one, ambitions that seem crazy initially, but the scale of the ambitions that we need to transform the world into the kind of place that we need to. And let's not forget this crazy guy. Any of you are climbers and hikers in the world? 14 peaks higher than 8,000 meters. Previous record to summit all 14 was 10 years. And he said, I'm going to do it in 7 months. Now, if you do that in your boardroom, I know what the answer is going to be, right? Either you're fired or you're really crazy. You need to get a grip. But he did it. And of course, this guy does it frequently. But what I, like or dislike about the crazy man that Vivian referred to is what he tries to build is not just an improvement, not just a cost reduction better than everyone. He tries to reimagine an industry and create a category of one. He really does try and go entirely beyond in his creation of category of one. How will I set myself apart from the competition? How will I do this in a way that others won't understand or won't be able to replicate and gain some competitive advantage, at least for a period of time? He doesn't just try and eke out a higher saving than the next best, Lockheed Martin or Boeing or whatever it was. And it's a thought process. If you think incremental improvement, incremental cost reduction, the brain releases certain chemicals. If you think cost to zero, deliver a service 0 times 0 cost. First reaction by your people is you crazy. Second is your brain releases a fight or flight chemical that makes you realize you've got to do it differently. That's what he does. And I think more of us need to kind of explore that. Just thinking about doing the impossible, that's crazy. Just watch these guys that performed this feat just a few days ago.
Okay, we've got 6.1 knots. It's a very steady wind right now.
27 meters, folks. It's remtrap. But that's not all. He had to leave, obviously. Category of one. Never been done before, absolutely crazy. Interesting for me was the connection of that brand to that crazy stunt, right? This is a brand that tells the world, we do crazy stuff, and guess what? We execute. And people buy into that. People get goosebumps when they see that brand, when they see the stunts they pull off. And somehow it kind of aligns the marketplace around them in interesting ways. And so in this world that's shifting from the old to the new, how do we stay relevant? And what are some of the signals and how are they changing the concept of relevance? And here just is a group of them, right? This is not an exhaustive list by any manner of means, but they're all interconnected. But what's interesting about these market shifting signals is they don't arrive by appointment. They kind of meet en route and they have sex en route. And then, when ideas have sex, then innovation happens. And so they create brand new industries, new ideas of opportunity. And then they arrive in the marketplace and you say, wow, where did that come from? How did that happen? I mean, think about the combination as Gerd has shown us, nanotech, biotech, 4D printing, how that changes industry, how that changes the energy demand, the debate around baseload energy, maybe even. Then you combine our kids shifting society with climate collapse and then a shift in geopolitics, and they change the marketplace in different ways. And these signals are all happening out there, arriving sporadically when they feel like it, not when we're ready, not when our strat plan's about to be changed, but these signals arrive as they want to arrive. And then, of course, what happened this week happens. And it changes the game in every single domain. You heard Vivian, how we are applying, the latest algorithm, if you like, to some of these other things like nanotechnology, growing organs, etc., diagnosing diseases and so forth. So the game is massively, massively interesting. And the question is, what are the new opportunities that these signals are opening up to us as business leaders? And how are we positioned to capitalize on them is the question. And this is not, again, an exhaustive list, but just take visualization as a theme of opportunity. Where could we apply visualization to change the game fundamentally? Let's have a few ideas. Sipho, you've done very well. Bernard, you've done well. You've done well. Who hasn't yet done well? Namvula, which industry? I think you've done well. Would you like to do better? I mean, I'm up for it. Category of 1, Sipho, give me an idea. Kobus, visualization as an area of opportunity. What industry do you think it can really change? Dave, an idea? Anybody? Andre? Retail, absolutely. Retail. What's another one in our country that's massively problematical? Education, yeah, of course. Just think about the notion of visualization. Some people, not many people know that I started out life studying medicine. Got into second year, they wheeled the cadaver in. And when they said, this is going to be your best mate for 2 years, you're going to get to know this human intimately, I bailed. Phoned my dad, said, Dad, made a big mistake, I'm going to study law. Of course, in today's world, you don't have a real cadaver, right? You have a virtual cadaver. So think about how we use visualization in our talent learning departments in our companies. Are you geared for it? Is your talent learning development team ready for this world? And I agree with Gerd. I mean, metaverse is insanity, but maybe there's something to do there together with augmented reality, virtual reality that changes that game. Think about the world of cyber. I mean, Gerd's spoken about Earth and, green being the new digital and the new gold, et cetera, et cetera. What about the cyber world? Massive, right? Every one of these affects every one of our companies in this room, although this is a wide range of industries. The question is, what is our ability in the boardroom to make capital allocation decisions that support the right areas of growth that we need to capitalize on in these domains? Do we have the skills in the room? How about the people? Yes. Yeah, they want dividends. They want short-term dividends, right? Yeah, we'll get to that, Sipho. We'll get to the session with Louis on how we're going to make them very happy with their dividends. And so, folks, the truth of it is that many companies have, consultants, they have offsites, they're clever people. How are we going to compete and how are we going to create differentiation for our company? When everyone is faced with the same stories, they read the same stuff that you and I do. And the only answer, I think, is that we're going to outthink them. So what about our culture? Do we embrace this curiosity? Are we brave enough, are CEOs brave enough to challenge people to think openly and have some of the crazy ideas? What happened to the last person in your company that had a crazy idea? Do they get promotion? You know? Do we have a risk budget for exploring crazy ideas? And I'm not talking about betting the farm, that would be stupid, right? But how do we think better than our competitors, than other nations, about how to harness this new future, this good future that Gerd talks about? Particularly when the opportunities don't come from within an industry. You know, I'm often asked to come and speak at a conference on the future of retail or the future of education. It's the wrong question. Let's look at the context. Let's look at all the signals that are impacting on learning. And then let's ask the question, what does that mean for the future of education? And have a different conversation. Because often it's insights from different industries. Interesting that Capitec, as you know, was voted the fourth most innovative bank for 4 or 5 years in a row. When they started out, what was their policy about recruitment? 70% of their people were not allowed to come from financial services. The question I want to ask you is, which industry were they expected to come from, or which industry did they mostly come from? Give me a guess. Did you say mining? It would be wrong. Anyone else? Retail, wrong. Who said hospitality? See, you got the bright young people. They're so bright. Hospitality, it's exactly right. And now it's obvious, right? Now it's obvious in retrospect. So how do we look at insights from other industries and bring them into our own to create these successful businesses? And of course, we've all been hearing too much about this dude, but here's the story I want to tell about ChatGPT. Google, the owner of search, text search, data search, etc., has just declared code red. How could they not have seen it coming? They're the incumbent. They're the biggest in the world, the most powerful, successful in the world. Is it one of these reasons? Do you think it's because of complacency? They're number one. They're biggest, they're successful, they're profitable. Just didn't see it coming. Do you think that they are slow because they become bureaucratic and hierarchical, despite the shift in their corporate structure? Right? It's just more of the same, different organogram. Or is it because they're risk averse? Because their shareholders want them to deliver, sustainable, identifiable profits every single quarter, or dividends once or twice a year. Why is it? But the real question is, what are we doing to make sure we don't fall into the same trap? Now Google's playing catch up. Now Gerd might argue, we had the discussion, that they may be being wise by slowing it down, learning first. But in the old economy, in the old world, fast followership was a valid strategy. In the new world, with 180 million, 200 million users in the first 6 weeks, you better catch up quickly if you're second. And the question is, can Google catch up to OpenAI? I don't know the answer to that. But I think as businesses, we've got to make sure that we run our companies in a way that we don't fall into that trap. And very often you see the incumbents making the same mistake. So the message we've got loud and clear, folks, is it's just a tool. But I love this. From 2015, Harvard Business Review, HR needs to be blown up. Vivian gave us that answer this afternoon as well. When she can build an AI today that measures productivity without ever interviewing with anyone, etc. So old institutions, how many of you, don't raise your hand, have companies that still have HR departments using those words, right? That's really scary. That needs an immediate reset, because humans are not a resource to be exploited and then chucked out as waste. So how do we reimagine HR in a world of ChatGPT, in a world of visualization, in a world of outsourced contract management to global companies that employ people from all over the world on your payroll? In a world when maybe half your people don't want to work for you or where you're at, but they're happy to contribute their learning or their knowledge to your business. So we need to rethink this. And I think in many other parts of the company, exactly the same rule applies. So the message is a big shift. Let's have a look at some of the shifts. We've spoken about exponential, extensively, but what we're learning as we piece these signals together is that the shift is into a world where everything is smart, connected, real-time, and automated. Everything. So if you can imagine education where the pace of learning for every student is accelerated at their own pace using AI, giving them access to information not determined by a very slow government policy and syllabus forum that takes many years to change the syllabus, where we don't grade kids according to age groups in classes of 25, automated real-time learning personalized humanly for every single human. That's becoming a reality. Now the question is, what are the choices we need to make so that that's the outcome? And you can apply the same logic into every single part of your business. The point is the business model changes. So Curo's made huge profits, dividends, etc. They've got a big stash of cash even right now on the old educational model. Yes, they've got sexy campuses and some funky new subjects, but really it's fundamentally the old system, right? So how do we reimagine education completely in this world? What's the new business model for education? And as we enter these interconnected systems, and of course now we've got, it's not IoT, it's IOET, or maybe IOEBT, Internet of every bloody thing. Everything's going to be interconnected, right? In real time, automated workflow, no human intervention, only the exception reported up through the mainframe, through the cloud into the enterprise system. Actively engaging, settling arbitrage contracts between spot prices of manganese linked to the availability of shipping and some transnet rail capacity, etc., all determining the speed of the digger at the coalface. In real time, no human intervention. That's the kind of world we're moving towards. What's the new business model for that world? And then it amuses me that we still talk in 2023 about platforms. Bless your souls, folks, if you're still talking about a platform in your business, because everyone's talking about platform. So how do we create a category of one in a world of interconnectedness? These guys built an economy. 1 million mini programs, all connected with data interfaces in real time, is WeChat in China. And no matter what part of your life you're engaged through on WeChat, it's integrated insight, real time, activate economic opportunity. It's an economy and it's on a phone. Now, the assumption immediately is in Africa, we don't have enough connectivity and not everyone can afford a phone. Yes, in 23, you're absolutely right. But we're thinking about a future of 2030. That'll be a toxic assumption because by 2030, everyone will have one of these smart devices in their hand connected with 7G or 8G. And guess what? It's going to be free. Vodacom, MTN won't be charging us money, if not no money, very much less money for data and airtime by 2030. My view is it's going to be free. So what's the new game when we think about our business as an economy? Because the marketplace is very simple. Everything's going to be smart and everything's going to be real time. And folks, I know we say that, Vivian said that technology, creates the gap, but let me just ask you this question. How much do you think a rural farmer in Kenya will benefit from GPT-4 versus someone in New York, in Manhattan? Manhattan will get it first, but their enhancement is going to be 10 or 15% of their life, whereas the rural farmer is going to have a 300% impact on her life. Right? So that's our challenge, is to get it out there and give this opportunity to everybody. So in this world, of course, here's the challenge, because as business, we now start planning, right? You listen to Gerd, you listen to me, you listen to Vivian, and you go away and you call your team together and say, hey guys, we've got to think differently. So where do we start? We do a SWOT analysis, maybe do a competitor analysis. We understand our core business. We know what the board's going to say about the risk. We know people about the shareholders. And so we apply all those lenses over our desire to think about taking our business to become a category of one. And every one of these is a constraint. Every one of these is a lens that dulls our senses to create that magic that we really need to transition into the good future, to go beyond. And so that's why we miss the opportunities, because we're just looking in the wrong directions and we're not asking the right questions. Was it you, Gerd, that said about the questions? Maybe Vivian, I'm not sure. But it's about that stubborn curiosity, asking the different questions of people around us. And that's how we need to think about it. So, folks, the message is, how do we reimagine? I mean, how many of you think on a scale of 0 to 10, 0 being boards, ask all the wrong questions, 10 being they ask all the right questions? 5 is the boards are somewhere in the middle, 50-50, right? How many of you think boards in South Africa typically are 0 to 5? In other words, 0 is they ask all the wrong questions. 0 to 5, any hands up? Okay, wow. 6 and 7, which is a little bit better than average. 6 and 7, anybody? Okay, it's 2 optimists here. I like an optimist. But with socks like that, how can you not be an optimist? And 8, 9, and 10, anybody? 8, 9, and 10, anybody? No? There's the dilemma for us, right? It's a real dilemma. So the question is, how do we reimagine this future? And at this point, I'm going to click over to Louis, who's going to beam himself in and take us into another chapter, and then I'll come back and wrap it up there. Louis, it's over to you, partner.
Thank you, Anton. My job is when shift happened, then we need to reimagine. And I just want to confess that I am not a futurist like Anton or Gerd, but I want to tell you I've seen the future. We have had robots at every intersection in this country for many, many years. They are lazy and they don't work, especially in Johannesburg. I just thought I'd make that point. So what I'm going to do is I just want to actually give you a little bit of an entertaining view around, you've seen the macro, all the big stuff that is happening in the world, but what are the real impacts on companies? And I want to particularly focus around what are we seeing in capital markets, valuation of businesses and capital markets behavior that we can learn from in terms of navigating for us as business into the future. Now, this Reverend, we have another Reverend in the room. Just put up your hand, Reverend. Where's Reverend Shikani? There's another Reverend, Martin Luther King. And I quickly added this purpose revolution because you all know his famous speech. He said, I have a dream. He did not say, I have a nightmare, I have a spreadsheet, I have a strategy, I have a plan. I have a dream, right? And I think many times in business, what we are seeing is companies do not achieve their full potential because they do not have a real transformative purpose and a dream that they can cling to. And the point of this story is that I think there's a very different strategic approach that companies have to start thinking about and following. The days of going on a Bosparot, writing 3 flip charts full of the things that we're going to do in the next 2, 3, 4 years, that time is gone because the world is changing too rapidly. It is changing too rapidly. I really believe in my heart of hearts, the only remaining competitive edge for companies is just one thing, and that is agility. How quickly can we react to changes in the environment, make course corrections, adopt new opportunities? That is the only competitive advantage that is left. And I believe, and this is embedded in our Futureworld approach really, is to say you've got to do 3 things right. You've got to first of all understand where the world is going. You've got to have a big dream and a purpose. You've got to design your game plan, and you've got to go and create a portfolio of new businesses that are sitting outside your current core. Many of you in this room, we've worked over the years together on many occasions. I think this will resonate with you. You understand that, the importance, because the business of today and the business of tomorrow, these new things you want to do, it's like oil and water. They simply do not mix. If you're going to try to do in this day and age, do a digital transformation on your current business, the bad news is you've lost the opportunity. It's too late. Put the foot flat out on the accelerator of your current business, but for heaven's sake, develop a portfolio of new businesses with no legacy that is digital to the core, which you can compete with in the marketplace. Now, I want to just tell you, maybe some of you have heard this little story, but I believe it's a strategy story. The story is of a gentleman who drives with his family to Cape Town, and he wants to go and show his kids the castle. And he takes an off-ramp, as people often do in Cape Town, too quickly, and he ends up in a bad part of Cape Town. And he stops to ask directions, and he stops at the newspaper seller. And he winds down the window. He says, "Excuse me, sir, I want to get to the castle. Can you help me?" He says, "Yes, sir, let me show you." He says, "You drive down this road, 1, 2, 3 robots. Then you turn right." No, drive back. He says, "No. You drive down on the other side. You must go under the highway. Then you go 1, 2, 3 roads. You're going to turn right. No, drive that. He says, sir, I want to tell you, you stuffed. You can't get from the castle if you start here. Now, the reason why that is a strategy story is, apropos the point that Anton made earlier, if we're going to start trying to define the future of our businesses, and the starting point is the business we are in today, we will never be able to really unlock that big dreams and purposes that we have for our businesses. And I want to just tell you another quick story, if I may. And this is the story of somebody that started in 1984, and he started the most phenomenal company, entertainment company. And the reason I love showing this clip is because I inadvertently saw the show in Vegas, and it really blew my mind. I've said at another meeting the other day, it is so good that it's actually worth getting on a plane, going to Vegas for one night and watching this. And I want to tell you the story after you've seen this clip.
Good sound. Yeah. Just give me my mic back. Louis, we can't hear the sound. Is your volume up?
Can't you hear the sound?
No.
Oh, wait. Sorry. Let's try again.
Yeah. It's COVID, Louis. It's COVID.
Okay, let's go back. Let's run it, Maestro. No.
No.
Who's dangerous? Who's bad? Go with it. Go with it. Stop pressuring me. Why you wanna trip on me? It's me. It's Michael. Let's make history.
Any guesses as to who that is? This business that I'm talking about was founded by a guy who was a fire eater in rural Montreal named Gilles Lalibert. And he founded this business called Cirque du Soleil. And he sold his company actually in 2015 to a private equity group that at the time, it made him one of the wealthiest entertainers according to Forbes in the world. But apropos the point about reimagining, why did he become the wealthiest entertainer at that time? I believe he did 4 things which we can draw lessons from. The first thing he did is he believed that creativity was actually the key. It's not, if you think back to your time of going to a circus, what do you think about? You took the kids to Boswell, Wilkie, or one of these things. What do you think? What comes up in your mind? I think what will come up in your mind, if I was there in person, I would have quickly did a Q&A. But you probably think of a tent, smells of elephant dung. You sat on hard little wooden benches. That was circus. And you probably paid 20 or 30 rand to go per person to go and watch it. And it was disparate acts. But what he did is he weaved together a series of intricate acts into a story, a beautiful story. So creativity was the first thing. The second one is the venue became as important as the content. So you will never find a Cirque du Soleil show that is in a second tier venue. Very often these venues are purposefully built only for that particular event or that particular show. The third one was never a headline act. You don't have Ivanka from Ukraine as the world's best trapeze artist that you will find in the brochure. Why? Because there's only one Ivanka. No, what they do, their business model is to train multiple artists around the world on the same content so that they can deliver the same show in multiple regions in the world. So it's a scaling issue that they've been able to capitalize on. And lastly, they attracted a completely different audience. Instead of a kids and 30 Rand per seat, they 100x'd it. 100x, because they appealed to a completely different audience, focused on adults and corporates and so forth. They did that by reinventing the oldest forms of entertainment. That captures for me why the reimagination is so important. And Anton put this graph up. I'm not going to go through it again, but the point is these market forces. The point about the market forces that Gerd and Vivian talked about is it's got a binary outcome. I'm saying it's a binary outcome because either it can decrease the slope of the line and see that as your revenue, your market cap, whatever you want. But here's the thing, the very same market forces are creating opportunities for other players. And I guess for executives, leaders like yourself, the question is, are you going to be in a situation where market forces are going to destroy you, or are you going to destroy others by capitalizing on them? And we're living in a world where, why wouldn't you be able to set an aspiration to by 2030 to 3x your revenue, 5x your income, and 10x the value of your businesses? We're living in an exponential world where it is possible to do that. And I'm not going to go through this again. The point I want to make around this overtraded metaphor is this chap from Pretoria, and by the way, very good things come from Pretoria. I also come from Pretoria. The point, whether you love him or hate him, right? The reality is capital markets, shareholders are putting vast amount of money behind an individual with a big dream. The message for me is, do we have big enough dreams in companies? Because what capital markets are doing, the world that we are living in right now, is backing entrepreneurs with enormous amounts of capital and value. There's a reason why, and this is as of today, he's worth 187 billion. He's the second wealthiest individual on the planet, as crazy as he might be, because he's got these crazy transformative purposes for his businesses, whether it's for SpaceX colonizing Mars, or with Neuralink connecting man and machine and so forth, or this Optimus thing that he wants to do. Shareholders are backing him to the extent that some people, he's got such a following that people are willing to tattoo his name and surname on their knuckles. And the question for reflection for all of us in the room, myself included, is, are we doing stuff through our companies that people will be willing to tattoo you or your company's name on their knuckles because you are having such an impact? Maybe that is a great conversation to have.
Any hands up?
By the way, it's a funny thing. My colleagues and I had a conversation with a company in Denmark. When was it, Aubrey? Last week, I think. And we put up this thing, and the one person came up and says, no, we actually have a few people in our company that have tattooed the company name on the, I don't know where they said they tattooed it, but anyway. So there are companies out there with such a following. I just want to, some of you have seen this already, but if we zoom out, and just zoom out with me for a moment to 30,000 view. You are global investors. You are looking at all of the investment opportunities around the world. You are looking at it. Let's just realize what has happened in capital markets and what capital markets value over the last X number of decades. The point is, in 1975, the total S&P market collective, the total S&P market capitalization, 83% tangible net asset value underpin, tangible NAV, assets that you touch and feel You could lock the doors when you leave at night. Tangible. 122 billion only in intangible. We used to call in the good old days goodwill. Now, something phenomenal happened between 1985 and 1995. And of course, that was the emergence of the internet. But by 2020 already, $21 trillion in intangibles on market capitalization. Intangible is now 5 times more than in 1975. What is the impact on banks that want to do asset-backed lending? Just think of the lunacy of asset-backed lending in this world that we are living in. So the point is, assets no longer have the same value. What it's with is patents, brand value, customer data, software. That is the stuff that is becoming valuable, not in my or anybody else's minds, in the minds of capital markets, people with money, with moolah. The other reality is the number of years companies spend on these global benchmarks are decreasing all the time. In 1965, on average, you were on the S&P 500 for 33 years. By 2012, it's down to 18, and the forecast is going to be 12 by 2026. And I guess the exam question is this, friends. How can it be that companies with unlimited capital, unlimited resources, the most cleverest people in the world, can be outwitted, outplayed, and relegated out of a global, call it a relevance benchmark? How can it be? And I asked Larry Page this question, and his answer was very simple. He said, I think there's one reason. He said, they miss the future. That's a simple answer. They miss the future. And the question back to us, including us in our business, your business, is what are we doing to protect ourselves to ensure we don't miss the future? And the board question was raised, and I want to ask you to fasten your seatbelts a little bit. I was asked to speak at an IOD, Institute of Directors event, a couple of months or so ago. And on the left there's what King 4 says, all the responsibilities of board governance are, and I've highlighted or I italicized all the ones that deal with strategy, okay? But when it comes to the board committees that King says we need to do, look at those committees: social and ethics, risk, compliance, remuneration, audit. Is it any wonder that global companies are disappearing off a relevance benchmark? And my one plea to you as very important and senior business leaders in the room today is that my one plea is, if you go back to your companies, why wouldn't we create, not that King says we should, but why wouldn't we create a futures committee, an exponential growth committee, a disruption or an opportunity committee, to start thinking about what would be the future of our business? What could be the acorns that we plant today that will potentially become the oak trees in 5, 10, 15 years' time? I really believe that's what boards should be doing. Relevance industries, as Anton has amply said, industries are no longer actually relevant. In 1980, energy was more than 30% of listed companies and of market cap. Look at what it is in 2020, less than 2.5%. Technology, more than 24%. The point I want to make is, if you look at those logos on the screen, what is a technology company? Is Amazon a consumer business company? Is it a technology company? Is Tesla an automotive company? Is it a renewable energy company? I think we have today is we are boxing ourselves into a definition of core business, and we are boxing our businesses into a definition of an industry. We are part of an industry. That is why we are unable to always capitalize on some of the unique opportunities that are out there. As Tom said, every company, we have to realize every company actually today is a technology company. And I'll just conclude with this. What all of us have to deal with today is that for capital markets, growth, and I emphasize this, and I will show you the data, growth is the single biggest driver of shareholder value. I'm sorry, it is not operating margin. It is not your asset efficiency. It is not the multiple. It is the proxy for shareholder value is growth and an X factor, which we like to call expectations. Over the last decade, top quartile companies, every single industry, this is not a tech picture, 71% of total shareholder returns exclusively coming from revenue growth and this expectation. What is an expectation? The expectation premium that shareholders are saying, I will back a management team to go and create new revenue streams, new businesses, new opportunities. I have faith and trust in them. I'm willing to reward them, pre-reward them in terms of value, because I'm expecting them to either repeat what they've done in the past or an inherent belief that they will go and create phenomenal new things. That is the expectation premium. And the question is, over time, I want to say the more things change, the more they stay the same, actually, because today the hot industries are something else. But there was an expectation premium in the 1900s. If you were in oil or textiles or in railroads, there was an expectation premium. But the problem is a railroad company, if they didn't recategorize themselves as a logistics company or as a transport company, they were discounted over time and they only became a railroad company, and the capital markets were only willing to reward and pay for those companies the DCF value of the cash flows they are able to generate, and discounted that because it's predictable. The point is that where we are today, as Anton said, the magic is happening at the intersect of industries. Where we are today in the Fortune 500, the companies you see there, energy, tech, financial, consumer and health tech and biotech, is 2 times the value of the next 16 sectors combined. That is where we are. And this is my last point, Anton. I just want to show this because I don't think we can actually go live. The question that you might have is, can we pinpoint intrinsic value? Can we pinpoint that premium that companies are being paid or rewarded with, that expectation premium? We will be launching, and maybe we're also not that clever, as Vivian said, because it's not a great business model, but we're going to give it away for free. We have worked for many years with a quants firm in the US. And imagine you had the ability at any point in time, for you are in leaders of listed companies. And I could tell you, with all the AI, all the information out there, this is the intrinsic value of your company. Let's look at Apple on the screen. Maybe you can't see it very clearly, but it's the top blue one. Yeah. Apple's real value today, and that changes every day, is $2.6 trillion. Its market cap is only $2.3 trillion. Okay, so it's trading at a 12% discount to its real value. It might be because we believe they're running out of growth runway, or it might be that we think the company is undervalued. I don't know what it is. But the point is, look at a Tesla. Tesla is trading at a 200% premium to the real value of its cash flows, the DCF value of its cash flows. So its intrinsic value is 450 billion, and it is and its trading, its market cap is 642. So it's trading at a premium. And we can look at many different companies. I've just put another one for you for South African companies. You can see there, First Rand is the top one. Now, if we are able to track this, my last slide is this. We have many companies here. I want to just imagine you are in a strategic planning session for SA Inc. I know, Sipa, you advising government and so forth, but let's imagine we are in a planning session for SA Inc. We are advising the president. And I want to show you this slide. By the way, the average premium right now, as of today, for the US market is 77% premium. The average for the entire JSE is a discount of 6%. Now, here I'm zooming out like 50,000 foot. Here is the average premium or discount for sectors of all capital markets in the world combined. Now, here is my point that I made. If in the 1900s you paid a premium for railroads and textiles, right now, the stuff that Gerd talked about, that Anton talked about, capital markets are paying a premium over the real value of those companies that are listed in that sector. The highest premiums in the world at 180%. The dark blue lines on the left, I've just given you the South Africa average, okay? So first of all, there are no such companies in South Africa. That's why there are no blue lines there. Technology companies in the world is trading the second highest at 119%. The technology companies listed in South Africa are discounted at 16%, and so on and so forth. The only ones that are coming close is like in the healthcare industry. But here is the reality that we need to understand, first of all, and then confront with. Globally, the industry or the sector that attracts the lowest premium is energy and extraction. It's the lowest premium right now, which tells me the age of the big energy, oil and gas companies have come and gone. We need to latch onto something new to make South Africa great again. And the other reality is for our mining colleagues, and we also involved in mining, is the point is, even though it's trading at a premium in the world, South Africa, that sector is discounted by 45%. Why is that? Bernard, I know you're in the room, you always taught me about the SA discount in that we have to confront with in South Africa. But that is the story. And the question for us for pondering is, Anton, is what do we need to do in South Africa that we can build businesses, that we can build industries that will, from a global perspective, attract a premium again? That is the question, and I conclude with that.
Mike, guys, and switch over to me. Thanks very much. So, pretty insightful statistical analysis of the nuts and bolts of business as we're doing it. And if we really are, folks, going to embrace and build the good future in South Africa, what we've got to start doing is imagining what that is. Let's write a picture of the story. But then we know that dreams need to be made real. And how are dreams made real? Well, they're made real when we take decisions. So here's my provocation to each one of you individually, and I guess us as a group. Let's start taking different decisions. And I'm going to give you 5 questions now, and I'm going to ask you to think about the decisions you might take tonight, maybe not after dinner, maybe that's not a good idea, but tomorrow, next week, etc., etc. Think through every decision you take, whether it's a appointment of a person, a capital allocation, a new business venture, a new director you want to, whatever it is. Ask yourself these 5 questions. Here they are. Wake up. Pointer. There we go. First question, is this decision future fit? Second question is, will it deliver linear outcomes, or does it at least have the potential to deliver something exponential? Something beyond the cost of capital or the sort of economic margin, etc. The third question is this decision maintaining a standard operating procedure, Or is it at least positively disrupting a way we've always done things, thought about things, executed things, etc., etc.? Whether it's speed, whether it's process. And by the way, here's another little provocation on the side. Any standard operating procedure in your business, no matter what industry you're in, that was designed post-March 2020 is by definition out of date. Because on the day we shut the world down and business continued, we learned that it's possible to do things differently. Think about your own SOPs. How old are they? Fourth point, are we building towards this good future, Society 5.0, a world where we successfully blend happy people with better nature, a better planet together, where we reward entrepreneurs, risk takers, providers of capital, but 9 to 10 billion people wake up in the morning thinking tomorrow could be better than today if I work hard, where there's equity in the world? How do we blend all of that together and create Society 5.0? Is this decision helping me move towards that, even by a nanometer? And finally, and perhaps the most important question to you is, will every person reading my decision actually get goosebumps of excitement and anticipation or not? Positive anticipation. And folks, if you can't answer positively to 3 of those, hit pause, call the board members back in again and say, we need to rethink this, we need to reimagine this, because we're just not moving towards an ideal South Africa or an ideal business. And then I want to say to you, remember the days when we kind of thought the crazy stuff as kids and we had a heck of a lot of fun out in the field, camping on weekends, quite safely on our bicycles with mates or whatever it is? How do we start asking the imagine if question in our board meetings? As Louis said, dominated by risk committees and ethics committees and compliance and risk committees. How do we start just asking the imagine if question again, openly, without career limiting moments? And this is what Patagonia did. Quite interesting that Gerd also chose the Patagonia story, because Patagonia says, what if we make Earth our shareholder? And so they donated all of the shares in their company to a non-profit on behalf of Earth. Profits are reinvested for the benefit of Earth. And folks, in the old world, it was either or. I'm surprised Louis didn't talk about it, but it's the elation of and versus the tyranny of or is his favorite expression, right? In the old world, it was either or, either NGO or profits. But Patagonia's profits have just hit record levels. And the benefactors of that is Earth, you, me, and our grandchildren. What if? Imagine if. So it's not about socialism, it's not about communism, it's about making profits. It's just how we apply them. They've chosen to do it somewhat differently. And so let's move away from a world where people are anxious. Last year in America, 72% of people have more than one mental illness symptom. It's a reality. Every one of us in this room has felt that to a greater or lesser degree in the last 2 years. I guarantee it. Brave man or woman that says, no, I didn't. And one thing we need to do to resolve that, the first thing we need to do as humans in this room, is clearly articulate the reason why tomorrow will be better to our people, to our shareholders, to our board, and to our people. Let's give them a sense of why we're putting up with all this drama, all this, anxiety about Monday next week. I mean, let's just give people a sense of what they do, why they do it, and why what they do is important, and what the destination is that we as leaders are taking them towards. Let's just build that sense of purpose. Folks, now I want to ask you a question. Do any of you know a very worthy global leader in any discipline or domain that was courageous without vulnerability? Personal vulnerability. And you can't. And yet how many CEOs are there out there that just will not become personally vulnerable? And one of the features of the CEO in the old world was they were appointed because they knew everything. They'd done it, right? And they were bright, they had the answers. So they didn't need to be humble. They told you. And in today's world, we don't know the answers. And we need to confess to that. We need to have the courage to say, I have no clue how this is going to pan out. I want to go there with my business. I have no clue how to do it. Work with me in trying to achieve it. Help me do that. And of course, humility. Imagine the vulnerability that guy faced when he kissed his family goodbye that morning. I'm not sure I'll ever see them again. Doesn't get more vulnerable than that. But we need that in our boardrooms and in our organizations. And Indra Nooy was an incredible example of a leader that saw the future. The signals were there. She was observing young kids going to gyms and running and eating healthy foods and not drinking more Coca-Cola. And she said to herself, the marketplace is shifting. And she said, I'm going to transition. Her first announcement after being appointed, that I'm going to transition Pepsi-Cola from a carbonated sugar drinks business into a healthy snacks and food business. And of course, the analysts and some of her board members and the FT and the, Bloombergs, etc., gave her stick. They said, stick to your core business, optimize your production, sweat your distribution supply networks, etc., etc. And she said, yes, I'll do that. That's the business of today. I will do that. Of course, I'll do that. But I'm also going to position PepsiCo for the future. Now, if you analyze PepsiCo versus Coca-Cola today on Louis' charts, you'll see PepsiCo have a greater innovation premium than Coca-Cola. I've done work for Coca-Cola in Atlanta. When they first briefed me 7 or 8 years ago, they said to me, Anton, you may not talk about sugar. We wrote a mind bullet. How many of you get our mind bullets, by the way? Any of you get our mind bullets? Okay, for those that don't, it's a weekly article of news, 200 words, no advertising, no spams, news from the future, not predictions, just scenarios. And 11 years ago, we wrote one that's saying sugar will be the next tobacco. And today, of course, Coke and I laugh about this together. But you remember the days when we weren't allowed to talk about sugar? Okay, Indra Nooy was courageous up front. And then, of course, if we take the world of Microsoft, we got Bill Gates and so forth. And then, he started the business and it grew massively successful. This guy took over the business and all he could do was rant on a stage, right? Ego, like, can't get through a doorway. Mind your head signs were on the vertical columns of the doorway when he approached. Mind your head, right? That's how big his head was. And then along came Satya Nadella and he turned Microsoft around. Microsoft was on the skids. Again, incumbent. And what did he do? It wasn't about the tech. It was about servant leadership. It was about getting rid of the corporate terrorists first thing in the morning. And it was about talking about culture, humanness. Goethe has spoken about the fourth industrial revolution Vivian has. That's all about the tech, the robots, all that clever stuff. The question is, what's the fifth industrial revolution going to be about? And I think, folks, if it's not about rehumanizing humans, then I'm not sure we deserve to survive as a species. But this guy got it right. And it's a wonderful story about the power of having a purpose with people that believe in it, serving each other. Now, I can think of a few domains in our life in this country where that would be a precursor to a lot of momentum. And then just to wrap up, anyone heard and watched the video of Samantha Ghoshal? You nodding your head there, Eugene? Anyone else? Write it down, folks. Take a picture of the screen. Google this guy this evening. It's a 7-minute video. But he tells an incredibly powerful story about companies. Smell. They have a smell, right? And they smell like downtown Calcutta. And he could say this because he was born there. Now, downtown Calcutta in summer, let me just explain it to you briefly. It's 36 to 42 degrees Celsius. It's 120% humidity, and it's noisy and smelly. And it's got 9 or 10 or 15 million people by now. You can imagine the smell, right? And he said companies smell like that, where everything is lethargic and slow. And even if you want to go and play golf in Calcutta, there's no ways you can play golf or run or smile even. Companies are like that. Standard operating procedures, quality of the coffee, age of magazines in reception area, etc., etc., give off a smell. He says, on the other hand, he lives in Fontainebleau where he used to lecture before he died. And he says, on a weekend, I'm stressed, I'm tired, I go into the forest and I want to just walk slowly and breathe because I need to relax. He said, it's not possible. He said, in Fontainebleau, the forest smells so vibrant, dynamic, fresh, exciting. You hear the birds, you just run and you sing. Companies are like that. And we start at the top and we create the smell. So think about your business. Think about other business that you've experienced. I mean, who can tell me an example, not in the room, about a Calcutta South African company? Anybody? Okay, let's leave SOEs out of this entirely. And any other thing we may want to be disparaging about, let's not do that. But think about it. How many of you can think of a Fontainebleau company? Anybody? Yeah, give me an example. Fontainebleau. Who would you say? Futureworld. Ah, there we go. That's my partner. She took the word out of your mouth. So really think about it from a very simple, practical point of view. How are we designing our organizations to unleash, I think, the magic of humans in this world? And folks, scuba diving is my big passion. I love doing it at least once a year if I can. One thing I've learned in scuba diving is if you stop breathing, you die. As simple as that. At any 1 meter, 20 meters, doesn't matter, you just die. And so I think my concluding message to us as leaders is, let's just also press pause and breathe. Let's not wake up at 5 o'clock in the morning and read all the South African newspaper headlines, because that kind of stops you from breathing, much of it. Let's just breathe. Let's just give ourselves time and space to think. Let's make goods, hour a day to think about the future, read different things, have different conversations, get excited about the art of the possible. And let's take our minds to the world of beyond the obvious, if you like. We've got a hell of a job to do. We're up against the capital markets of the world. I know we can do it, and I think I can do it with everyone in this room. The future, folks, really is ours. And it won't be a matter of choice, because we're going to make, chance. We're going to make a different set of choices in this room. And to conclude, because I'm now a hell of a thirsty, and if I'm thirsty, I think you're even more thirsty, because you've only used one part of it. I've used one part of my body, you've used two, so you're twice as thirsty. Let's wrap up with some Bob Dylan music, and we're going to adjourn for drinks, Q&A, drinks outside, lovely dinner to follow. Here's Uncle Bob.
Come gather round, people, wherever you roam, and admit that the waters around you have grown, and accept that it's soon you'll be drenched to the bone. If your time to you is worth saving, then you better start swimming or you sink like a stone, for the times they are a-changing. Writers and critics who prophesize with your pen, and keep your eyes wide, the chance won't come again. Don't speak too soon, for the wheel's still in spin, and there's no telling who it's naming. For the losers, and now will be later to win, for the times they are changing. Mothers and fathers throughout the land, and don't criticize what you can't understand. Your sons and your daughters are beyond your command, and your old road is rapidly aging. Please get out the times they are a-changing. The line it is drawn, and the curse it is cast. Slow one now will later be fast, as the present now later be past.